Alright, so it's been almost 2 months I got the iPhone 14 Pro, and like every previous new iPhone launches, I never rushed into reviewing it because I ran into several issues, including some weird, unexplainable bugs and battery drain issues. Since the day I unboxed it, Apple has issued over 5 iOS 16 updates, which I'm now on iOS 16.1.1. That's more software updates than any other new phones that I've reviewed within 2 months. And thankfully, these software updates have made it much better. But with all the rumors and speculations going on that we could expect a new USB-C or portless successor iPhone next year, should you still jump on the dynamic island hype wagon? And more essentially, should you instead stick to last year's iPhone 13 Pro? Let's talk about it. The iPhone 14 Pro gets 4 major hardware upgrades over its predecessor, including a faster A16 Bionic chip, a new camera system with a 48-megapixel main camera, a better 12-megapixel front camera with autofocus, and a new display with a peel and punch hole cutout that Apple has creatively transformed and marketed as the Dynamic Island. Overall, it feels aesthetically similar to the iPhone 13 Pro with an updated front face. But all of these upgrades are also the reason why you might want to upgrade to the iPhone 14 Pro. Let's start off with the Dynamic Island. This is probably the most highlighted feature over any other features of the iPhone 14 Pro, which I have to admit that it looks really cool and can be really useful at times, even though I initially hated all that hype. I use it frequently to switch between music tracks on Apple Music and Spotify, and I am glad that I no longer need to switch between apps or go to the home screen to get there. However, I sometimes wish it had a little more utility. For instance, it could have allowed me to get into my AirPods Pro settings by doing a swipe left or right action rather than just showing me the battery and connection status for one time. It could have also served as a great notification bar for missed calls and messages. But I'm sure these features are already some of the feedbacks given by some other users and could arrive at a future software update. Despite some hiccups I experienced during the review period, the iPhone 14 Pro still performs more consistent and reliable than most Android flagship phones I've used this year. The A16 Bionic chip does give it a slight performance boost over the A15 Bionic on the iPhone 13 Pro, but it isn't a day and night difference when you do regular smartphone stuff and gaming. Even when it comes to power efficiency, the iPhone 14 Pro has very much the same battery endurance as its predecessor, where it will require a daily charge when I end a heavy workday or shoot a lot of photos and videos. So where does the power of the A16 Bionic goes to? For one, the always-on display, which I've turned it off throughout the period after using for a week. The A16 Bionic is tasked with managing power efficiency by tuning down the display to 1Hz refresh rate and the lowest brightness when you place it on the table, and turns it off entirely when you put it into your pockets. Even though it has better power savings than other Android phones with a similar feature, I still realize a slight impact on battery life, which can be crucial to those who want their iPhone to last a full day, which is the reason why I didn't continue using it after a week. The A16 Bionic is also responsible for powering the new camera system of the iPhone 14 Pro. Even though I think taking 48-megapixel ProRes photos should be no sweat even for the A15 Bionic chip, but to see how fast the iPhone 14 Pro can process regular 12-megapixel photos with the photonic engine is just bizarre when you tap on the shutter button. As you can see how these camera samples taken in low light have details and colors so well preserved. But once you compare similar shots to the iPhone 13 Pro, the only major difference you will find is the color tone, and at certain times, the iPhone 13 Pro's camera tends to produce better looking photos. However, don't write off the iPhone 14 Pro's 48-megapixel camera just yet, because Apple has done a really smart job of allowing you to crop into the middle 12-megapixel of the 48-megapixel sensor to realize a 2x optical zoom, which isn't something that many other Android phones with high-resolution main cameras can do. Compared to the iPhone 13 Pro's regular camera, you get more details when zooming from 1x to 2x, and it is particularly useful when you only need to do a short-range zoom. What the iPhone 14 Pro's camera truly benefits me over the iPhone 13 Pro is video recording, and I especially appreciate the new action mode that allows me to take super stabilized B-rolls at a 2.8K resolution at 30 frames per second instead of 1080p on other Android flagship phones. And more impressively, you can switch between the 3 lenses on the fly while recording. You can imagine how much processing is being done by the A16 Bionic chip in the background to achieve such kind of footage, which would have only been possible if you use a gimbal. Notice this screen recording of me doing a circling shot around my wife. You can see that the camera's live view is super shaky as I run around her. But the output on the right is what I get after I finish the video. Action mode is unfortunately not available on the front camera, which the camera hardware is certainly capable of doing so, but sadly, it's not included. Other than that, the iPhone 14 Pro's front-facing camera is a super upgrade over the iPhone 13 Pro that can finally take group photos without blur on other people's face. Cinematic mode now records in 4K for both the front and rear cameras, but I still can't get the auto face focus to work properly, and it requires a manual tab if you want to focus on the other face. And like I complained before on the iPhone 13 Pro, the focus is just too sudden and doesn't look natural. Overall, I'm mostly happy but occasionally frustrated with the iPhone 14 Pro during these 2 months. And it is just very recent that I need to perform a full reset on my unit to resolve a weird Apple Music background activity battery drain issue. But the benefits that it offers on its cameras and snappy performance is the thing that keeps me coming back to it and at times reluctant to switch to an Android smartphone. To answer the question in the beginning, there's very little reason to upgrade to the iPhone 14 Pro if you already own an iPhone 13 Pro. Not unless you have deep pockets or appreciate the new camera features and dynamic island. I would be super happy to see a USB-C or portless iPhone if it ever happens next year, but for now, there's no reason to hold back for that if your current phone already needs an upgrade. And let me say this again, this is the best iPhone and possibly the most reliable smartphone, at least for the next 10 months. So that's all for my review on the iPhone 14 Pro. Do let me know your thoughts in the comment section as usual, and be sure to subscribe to our channel for more videos coming right out, and we'll see you in the next one.